Hi,
Hi,
Stephen. I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to speak to you.
how you doing? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Maybe you could just kick off with a brief introduction to Embattled. People who don't know anything about the film, how would you describe a bit about what they're going to see?
Uh, well, Embattled was a great script that I read, written by David McKenna, who wrote Blow and American History X and a bunch of really cool movies. The brutal look at a father and son's relationship, um, set against the backdrop of MMA, where I play a guy named Cash Boykins, who's the um, arguably the best UFC fight and best MMA fighter in the business, and in his weight class, and is a nut job. He's pretty much living in another world. He's not a very nice guy. He's verbally abusive. He's a terrible father, in my opinion. And overall, though he's in a very charismatic character and a very challenging one for me to play. But I think ultimately for an audience, if they like MMA, if they're interested in a tough look at the inner kind of personal damage, maybe from my past, whatever that's led me to this place in life, in this character, I think they'll be in for a pretty good ride. I mean, it's just a very intense family drama set against the backdrop of a sport that's kind of taken over. So that felt like a movie I should make, and it was a really hard character for me to play. But I am proud of the movie, and yeah, it was a tough one for me though. I mean, it was not an enjoyable character to play every day.
Mm.
So.
And it looks like it must have been tough even on the physical side, because your character, in the ring and outside of the ring, his physicality is very key to the role. So what was the preparation like for that, both in terms of your training, and then also you're obviously working with lots of real life MMA fighters. So what was all that like getting ready for the
Yeah, I
role?
mean, I think we had a great team of the MMA guys. I had this guy Chris Connolly, who is an amazing trainer for a lot of UFC fighters. And I had him on the ground in Alabama, where he's from, where we shot, where Cash is from. Then, you know, those elements really helped immensely, because you can always double check things with the pros, and how was that? I think I could do that better. And, as far as the physical, yeah, it was a very intense journey. I mean, I physically wanted to gain about 10 pounds of muscle. I was pretty lean, and I was shooting True Detective when I signed on to this film. So I kind of and True Detective went longer. So I kind of ran out of my time that I needed. Every week, every day counted in that time. And I was kind of 2 weeks late on it. So I literally was left with 4 weeks instead of 6 weeks, which was already too short for me. But I was able to kind of gain 8 pounds, 9 pounds of muscle, and then we went into the ground in Alabama. My trainer came with me. We continued lifting and building size. But then as soon as I would start the cardio and doing all the choreography stuff and the grappling, you lose a lot of weight because of all the sweating and the cardio. So, I found that I was losing a lot of the weight I would struggle to put back on. So I kind of tried to just limit the cardio, learn the fights, and save that for when we were on camera. And I think in the end, director was happy. I was happy with the look of him and the stuff I was able to accomplish in that short amount of time. But it was tricky. I mean, normally you'd want at least 2 months. And I think because we had a hard date of when we were starting shooting Embattled to when I finished True Detective, I kind of screwed myself a little bit. And the fact that we went over on True Detective didn't help, because I needed to get in the gym and start eating. But it all worked out in the end. So.
And you were mentioning there at the beginning, he's not a likable character, maybe a bit of an understatement at times. So how did you feel about playing him? And, did you have to kind of rationalize his behavior in order to play the character? How did you see him? Were you able to kind of explain the things he did, from understanding, a backstory of his, or how did you see him?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it was pretty clear from the script that he had, a terrible upbringing himself, you know, and was beaten up by his dad on many occasions. This kind of hard love, kind of tough love, old school mentality that he was brought up with, Cash, he's now obviously brought to his own children. And, you know, I didn't you know, me as Stephen, I don't agree with anything that Cash does, you know, but at the same time, he's a pretty colorful character to play. And, you know, it's like as an actor, whether it's a hero and a vulnerable character to the most nasty of characters, to, you know, a criminal, to a killer, to, you know, it runs the gamut. As an actor, you play the best parts you can get, you know, or the best parts that come your way. And in this crazy world, if it all comes together and we're on the set and we're making that movie, then we, you know, you've got to commit 100%. And so for me, you know, I tried to justify certain things, but I also just tried to embody myself into this guy and this kind of champion, this kind of great businessman, great fighter, talented fighter, but a nut job in his personal life, you know, kind of alienating every good thing that he's ever done in his life. He's alienating away from him. That's what the script was. That's who he was. And so try to become that energy. And it was an uncomfortable performance, definitely for me. You know, it was not one that I wouldn't want to play him in a television series, or, you know, for 10 more episodes next season. You know, he's in one movie and we're going to leave Cash alone. You know, that was the portrait we gave you of this guy. And that's what it was, you know, and we'll leave it at that, you know. But I'm not a big fan of, you know, he's definitely the villain of the movie, you know, even though he's the champion, which is, I thought was an interesting, again, very interesting way David McKenna wrote the screenplay. It's not what you would see in a normal fight movie, a normal Hollywood boxing biopic, which there's 9 million of. This was something fresh. It also is a world in which is so much more popular than boxing. Yeah, they still do 50 boxing movies a year that are all the same movie, it seems like, and don't really go anywhere. This is a world in which has more eyes on it. So I thought, wow, why not tell this story in the cage, in the MMA world, when there's only really been maybe a handful of movies done, and frankly, this is a better one. So I thought, you know, let's be on top of one of the biggest sports there is. We've seen 1 million basketball movies. We've seen 1 million boxing movies. We've seen the football movies. We've seen the soccer movies. You know, there hasn't been a lot of MMA movies, and this is the sport you hear about every week or every month that your boyfriend or your friends are going to buy on pay-per-view, and you have a little party. And, you know, to me, it seems like it has a real pulse. So it felt like a no-brainer. You know, it just wasn't a very comfortable one to make, but, you know.
And in terms of the things that, you know, you can take away from the film, obviously, you know, there's the scenes of the MMA, which if you're a fan, probably exciting to watch. Also, there's a lot of violence, though, and also the drama that comes out, you know, thinking about what it's like to be a parent of a child that has a disability. Obviously, I think, you know, the writer, it's his son who plays and who has Williams syndrome as well, and stuff about cycles of abuse and toxic masculinity. So what do you think, you know, people might take away from it other than just watching the action scenes?
You know, I think they'll get a very real look at what this story is. And I think, you know, to answer your question about McKenna, I mean, his son Colin is amazing in the movie. He's one of my favorite parts of the movie. I think he has so much heart, and he's so talented on camera. I've never really, I mean, the fact that he really has Williams syndrome, and he went and wasn't afraid to do this part, even though he was very, very nervous, was a real strength, and a real gift that he gave us. And I think it was so brilliant to have him play that part. And it made me sad to have to play these scenes with such a sweet kid that I got to know and really like. And, you know, every time after the scene, he'd have to he'd say to me, "But you're just faking it, right? I mean, I'm one of your best friends in real life, right?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I am. You are one of my good friends now, Colin, and this is totally make believe. So I don't want you to ever get confused." And you have to kind of explain this to young people, especially a young person that has, Williams syndrome. You have to you have to make these kids understand that I'm not this guy. I'm acting, and this is fake. I'm gonna hit you, but I'm not gonna really hit you, and I'm gonna say some mean things, but you know, we're gonna we're gonna get through this together. And at the end of the day, I'm Steven, and I'll give you a big hug at the end of it. So it was challenging in that way. It was definitely different for me, because I've worked with young people, whether it was Elle Fanning on Somewhere or young talent, and I've always been able to handle that really well. On this movie, it was another challenge because I'm reading the scenes I'm about to do with these kids, and it was very intense. I'm very not, so you want to talk to their moms, you want to make sure the mom understands, and the mom talks to them, and these are young thespians, so they're not seasoned pros yet, especially somebody like Colin's never done this before. So but everybody was so great, and I really, really enjoyed the casting, and I thought they really nailed all the casting. So
All right, fantastic. I think I'm out of time, but thanks so much for chatting to me and for making this, really eye-opening and fast-paced film. So it was great. Thank you very much.
thank you. See you.